So, Vice President, members of Council, past presidents, fellows and members. It's indeed a great privilege for me as President to address you on this, the 229th anniversary of the foundation of the College. Our surgical forefathers, despite the turbulent political times in which they lived, recognised the need for a College of Surgeons to promote the highest standards of training and practice of surgery, and they sought and obtained from King George III a charter to enable him to establish a college to do this. Communication and travel were extremely difficult in those days, and they managed to meet regularly, and through those meetings establish a set of guiding principles, secure a building, and set up and deliver a mechanism of assessment and accrediting surgeons in practice in Ireland. Most importantly of all, in terms of a legacy, our fathers bequeathed to us the noble tenets of institutional independence, academic freedom, tolerance of difference, and a commitment to humanitarian concerns. The professional legacy of these surgeons includes compassionate dedication to and advocacy for their patients, surgical practice to the highest ethical principles, a commitment to lifelong learning and study, and very importantly, a commitment to training the next generation of surgeons. Fast forward our college now on Stephen's Green campus for more than 200 years, and we find ourselves yet again in turbulent political and economic times. There is, in my view, an even greater need to advocate for our patients and to show compassionate dedication to their individual care in the midst of a target-driven, time-constrained patient processing system. I believe we are as equally committed to training the next generation of surgeons to the highest possible standards as our forefathers were all those years ago. But despite the terrific technological advances that have allowed us to have amazing surgical achievements, the difficulties of delivering a fit-for-purpose training to our modern surgeons are probably just as challenging as they were when our college was founded. We are nonetheless all agreed that ensuring a high-quality training program for our young surgeons is probably the most important function and responsibility of our college. In the past number of years, we have been concerned about the falling interest in surgery as a career choice amongst recent graduates. This is not a problem unique to Ireland, but rather is worldwide. And the reasons for this are multifactorial, and in our case include lack of career opportunities in Ireland, heavy erosion of the clinical autonomy of consultants, and the prolonged and frequently uncertain duration of surgical training in Ireland. Despite some important changes made to basic surgical training some years ago, the level of interest and negative feedback about the programme has continued. We hold the unenviable record of having virtually the longest surgical training system in the world. This, combined with the fact that the other training bodies are streamlining their training programmes in Ireland, making them more attractive to young graduates, forced us to look again at our training programme. One of the things that brought home to me the need for overhaul of our system was my recent experience with two surgical interns. The one on the left is not my surgical intern. That's, in case you can't see, that's Enda Kenny. But the man on the right is Gavin Falk. And Gavin entered RCSI Medical School as a mature student, having been a merchant banker. He qualified at the age of 32. He wanted to be a surgeon and nothing else, and sought advice as to how he should train. He was understandably concerned that the duration of training in this country would see him qualify as a surgeon at the ripe old age of 42 at the earliest. Accordingly, I advised him, and others indeed, to seek training abroad, and having done a preliminary year at the Cleveland Clinic, he secured a full residency training there and is now in his senior year. He is setting off to do a paediatric fellowship for 2 years and can expect to reach his goal fully trained at the age of 39. He is currently the chief surgical resident at the Cleveland Clinic. A more recent case relates to this young man, Daniel Joyce, who qualified from this college with first place and first class honours, final class valedictorian, and every possible medal under the sun. During his internship, he expressed an interest in a career in surgery. However, he decided himself early that he was not applying for the BST programme here, and even though he was very young when he qualified, under the age of 23, he felt that the pace and training of surgery, and the gap years in particular, would be unattractive, and accordingly he moved abroad. Because of his outstanding undergraduate achievements, he matched without the need for a preliminary year, and he is now a second-year resident in the Cleveland Clinic. Last year, he was named the outstanding first-year resident in the programme of all the specialties at the Cleveland Clinic. And these two young men, in my view, dedicated to the noble profession of surgery, left our shores because of our inability to deliver a training programme appropriate to their needs. The world is a much smaller place now, and these graduates wanted first and foremost to be surgeons. And whilst they might have wished to stay at home in Ireland, the priority was the opportunity to pursue their career in a timely and efficient manner. And whilst in theory they may not be lost totally to the Irish nation, it is unlikely that given the career opportunities which will be put at their disposal in the States, with fellowships, university teaching posts and career progression, that they would find anything comparable back in Ireland, particularly in view of what's been happening to us in the past few years in this country. So it is time, therefore, that we in Ireland and this college offered a better training opportunity at least. Therefore, as part of my presidential agenda for these 2 years, one of my top items was to drive some changes in the surgical training programme. And the fundamental question arose early on: do we adjust basic surgical training years again and leave the HST as is? Or do we go for broke and a major change to include eliminating the so-called gap years by creating an 8-year programme equivalent to a residency system? To most of us, it was clear that tinkering again with basic surgical training and expecting to come out with a significantly different result was unlikely to produce the desired effect. However, in comparison to previous attempts to make significant changes to the training programme, on this occasion we are very fortunate to have in the Department of Surgical Affairs talented people with project management skills, as well as backing up with several key committees and individuals who are prepared to drive on the change in a short time frame. A lot of work has been done and a lot more remains to be done, as Bertie used to say. But we do plan to launch the new programme in July 2013 this year, and indeed the interviews for intake to the programme are February the 19th. The basic construct is familiar to many of you now because we've been doing a promotion about this for many months. But this is our old model of training, with the basic surgical training followed by the gap years, followed by higher surgical training, and then maybe at the end a fellowship as well. We are transitioning to this programme where, as illustrated in this slide, the key question relates to selection immediately post-internship, leading into various specialties after the first 2 years. There are understandable concerns from both current and future trainees, and indeed trainers, about how this can be successfully achieved in a short time frame. And we admit that in the beginning we will probably need some form of hybrid system this year. But one of the most crucial changes is the elimination of the famous gap years, where, as we know, trainees to date have spent time in research to develop a bibliography and curriculum so that they could make themselves competitive for entry to higher surgical training. So research was a gate mechanism to get to the next level. We will eliminate that and see how it falls. But I wish to acknowledge at this stage the professors of academic surgery in the departments who over many years have provided research opportunities for our young trainees. Those of us who trained in the 70s and 80s remember that in addition to stepping out of clinical surgery, we had to go abroad for research opportunities. Despite its long duration, our surgical programme has always been admired worldwide for high quality of trainees that we graduate. And a significant factor, in my view, in this has always been the academic and research emphasis during training. And this was mentioned very much so by the orthopaedic community this morning in their discussions on training. The support of the academic departments and professors for the new programme is critical, and I am extremely grateful for that support, and hopefully trainees, when they progress to the later years of their programme, will identify an area of research that interests them, take time out from the training programme, and thus academic and scientific pursuit of a more focused nature with relevance to their lifelong specialty interest will continue to be an important component of our training programmes. For those who are not of a particular research bent, there will be bespoke MCH programmes so that all trainees in all disciplines will hopefully have the appropriate understanding of scientific method, statistics and other aspects of research. There is still considerable work to be done in terms of clarifying selection criteria, established robust methodologies of assessment, identifying high-quality training posts. But make no mistake about it, the workload of the trainer will significantly increase compared to the current situation with this new programme. It is intended that the new training paradigm will place the trainee centrally in all clinical, operative and scientific pursuits within the department. Whilst there will be competitive entry for the trainees, there will be competition between training units as they vie for the young surgeons of the future to come and work in their department. No unit will be immune from being discontinued. And as, for example, in the United States, where the famous Massachusetts General Hospital, #1 hospital in the United States, was placed on probation in terms of its ability to train because they weren't delivering on the various KPIs of training in America. It is proposed that we will admit 55 new trainees to the program in July 2013. This will represent a reduction by 20 of the number of training posts compared to previous years. We are very conscious of the implication for service of this reduction, but we make no apology for looking after our trainees as our priority. Over a number of years, we have been looking at physician's assistants, nurse specialists, and hospitalists as ways of service provision instead of trainees. We haven't made a lot of progress, unfortunately, with these concepts in talks with the HSE and the Department of Health, but we are currently in a position to offer a training program for physician's assistants. Perhaps the time is right again to resurrect these discussions because, understandably, there are concerns about service delivery. We're very fortunate that Ailish McGovern, my immediate predecessor, is now the National Programme Director for Medical Training, and she has been hugely supportive to the Department of Surgical Affairs in addressing this and other issues. Trainees who have commenced their programme within the last 2 years and those who are in the gap years currently are unsettled, understandably, by the proposed change process. However, this is where the value of expert project management is seen. This slide here illustrates how it is proposed over the transition years to incorporate those in current BST training, as well as those currently in the gap years, into the higher programme. And in the short term, expansion of higher surgical training numbers to accommodate the bulge will actually result in potentially increased opportunity for advancement in some disciplines. In any event, no matter what the reservations of some trainers may be, and no matter what their concerns and worries of current trainees and those in the gap years, leaving things as they are is not an option. We have inherited from our forefathers a legacy of doing what is right for surgical education and training for our current and future generations, and I and the rest of the leadership of the college are firmly committed to the task. There will be further discussion about this at the end of my talk, and indeed at the higher surgical training meeting tomorrow. I would recommend anyone who wants to hear more about it to attend. The second major function of our college is to provide professional support and opportunities for continued learning for our fellows in practice in Ireland in particular, and also abroad. I have always believed that professional fulfilment and satisfaction is an extremely important factor in influencing the quality and consistency of a surgeon's performance in their daily work. Therefore, it follows that if a surgeon is constantly distracted by issues relating to a lack of appropriate resources, and remember, increasingly newly appointed young surgeons in all disciplines do not have the appropriate resources available to them when they take up their appointments. So be it over beds, theatres, secretarial support or whatever, constant battles with administration will inevitably lead to frustration and disinterest and affect the quality of surgery. It is therefore very much this college's business to be involved with advocacy for our fellows and for the working conditions in which they find themselves. And we are increasingly moving into that space. In this regard, a recent collaboration with the HSE in helping to develop and govern both the elective and acute surgery programs has greatly improved lines of communication between senior leadership of the HSE and the college. I would like to pay particular attention or particular tribute to Frank Keane and Ken Mealy, clinical leads in general surgery, and David Moore and Paddy Kenny, clinical leads in orthopedics, and many others who have engaged with the HSE on various initiatives to improve surgical care. Many of us have already seen improvements in elective non-cancer workload getting into major teaching hospitals, day of surgery admission, and improved theatre efficiencies. My concern is that the sustainability of some of these initiatives is in question, particularly with further financial constraint predicted for this year. Many a health economist has stated that we have maxed out on cutbacks in terms of our ability to have a continued safe health service, which cannot continue to be guaranteed in the face of further financial constraints. If the HSE and the Department of Health are listening to the advice of college leaders in relation to delivery of the clinical programs, They certainly do not appear, however, to have any interest in discussing or listening to us in our advocacy for overall review of how future surgical services might be delivered throughout the state. The current model of consultant-delivered care, admittedly championed and introduced by a former government who wished to eliminate what they saw as the two-tier system, has, in my view, consolidated the two-tier system. Currently, young surgeons appointed to major state hospitals who return from Ireland to Ireland with fellowships from abroad and specialist expertise are confined by virtue of a restrictive contract to provide their services and expertise essentially to one half of the population, but mainly the public patient. This clearly is a nonsense in a small country like ours, and misuse of acquired expertise, which the state themselves have paid for. The proposed introduction of a universal healthcare system represents an ideal opportunity to look at this issue and perhaps to completely redesign the system by which we provide our services. We have offered alternative models to the current working arrangements, but apparently to no avail, and we have grave concerns, as indeed many of other colleges and faculties, of our ability to ensure that the brightest and the best who are currently away or about to go away on fellowship to do overseas training will come back to deliver their expertise to the Irish population as they did in former times. The positive spin-offs from our involvement with the HSE and Department of Health have been the establishment at long last of a National Office for Clinical Audit under the leadership of Mr. Ken Mealy and with the strong support of Dr. Philip Crowley, National Director of Quality and Safety at the HSE. A governance board has been set up with involvement of the College of Anaesthetists, Intensive Care Society of Ireland, the Institute of Trauma and Orthopaedics, as well as ourselves. And in this audit programme, which is an outstanding development and most likely would not have occurred unless we had engaged with the HSE, as we have done with the programmes. The first of these audit programmes, the Irish Audit of Surgical Mortality, has gone live. It will be a record of every death occurring under the care of a surgeon in Ireland. In view of the very questionable audit data that we've already had reference to, published in the Lancet recently, it is very, very important that we all contribute to this surgical audit process. A survey of our fellows carried out 2 years ago under the leadership of my predecessor, Ailish McGovern, indicated the view that the fellowship felt a serious lack of engagement with RCSI. A programme, therefore, of re-engagement was established to address this. Better lines of communication were deemed essential, and an online monthly newsletter has been put in place. Regional meetings with senior officers of the college were instituted, and the first of these took place in Waterford last year, and the next is planned for Sligo the week after next. Fellows have had to engage with the college because of the need to demonstrate compliance with the Professional Competence Scheme, and I'm happy to report that the vast majority of our fellows are compliant and have found the process of accessing the website fairly straightforward, with help available if it's not. Work in this area continues, and the numbers here today, 460 people registered, I believe are a testament, hopefully, to improved interaction. I know CME has a lot to do with it, but I like to think that perhaps some improvement in the re-engagement process accounts for it. The past few months have seen ongoing work on the formation of a Court of Examiners under the chairman of Professor Paul Redmond. It has long been felt by many of us in the college that the role of the examiner has been undervalued to some extent. We want our fellows who give their time to this important college activity to be recognised and to feel that their contribution is valued. Hopefully, becoming a member of the court will be sought after role and will result in increased interest amongst our fellows in being both local and intercollegiate examiners. Speaking of exams, I am pleased to inform the fellowship that a new intercollegiate joint surgical fellowships college's fellowship examination will be ready to go live later this year. This is an initiative of the 4 Royal Colleges in putting together a replacement exam for overseas candidates for the old individual college fellowships that were offered previously. To my mind, it is one of the most visible effects, and probably the only one at the moment, of the continued working together of the 4 Royal Colleges. The administration of this exam is being done through the Joint Committee of Intercollegiate Examinations based in Edinburgh, and Tim Graham, the chairman of that committee, has put considerable energies into bringing it to fruition. And it's worth noting that other colleges, including the American College of Surgeons, the Australasian College of Surgeons, and Hong Kong, are all the time looking to move into areas which traditionally have been considered our sphere of influence, our sphere of activity. Therefore, I believe that this examination will potentially maintain and hopefully enhance our presence and value in areas of the world where they will be conducted. Since the introduction in England of the Postgraduate Medicine Board, so-called PMED-B, the relationship between training programs in Ireland and the UK has changed. We continue to participate in the Joint Committee of Surgical Training, which through its surgical accreditation committees provides us with external quality assurance of our training programs. This is very valuable to us, and we pay for it, of course, but it's ironic that the SACs are no longer doing this work in their own country. Postgraduate surgical education is the core business of RCSI. In 2006, the initial design phase of a new surgical skills centre was completed. The plan was for completion of a 2,600 square metre facility on 3 floors that would be a state-of-the-art skills centre to support a full range of dry and wet training. Circumstances overtook us, however, and this grand design had to be shelved. But through the last few years, we have been working on ways to resurrect this important project, and I am pleased to report that a combined Medical and Health Sciences and Department of Surgical Affairs project will hopefully deliver a purpose-built structure opposite the York Street entrance. This will be a 6-storey building incorporating a sports hall and gym, auditorium, library over 3 floors, breakout areas, and the eagerly awaited Surgical Skills Centre on the 5th floor. This will be a hugely important expansion of our infrastructure here on St. Stephen's Green, and its shared function will be another demonstration of the unique synergy between the different elements of this college. We hope to lay the foundation in the next 12 to 15 months. The vision for RCSI's Department of Surgical Affairs is to serve the college's surgical practitioners and trainees and the public to whom they administer care. This vision is well captured in the DOSA mission statement, which states that we will support the RCSI noble purpose by delivering excellence in surgical education and training and by setting and supporting the highest standards of surgical practice. We will at all times act in the interests of patients and the quality of their care. I believe the initiatives outlined above in relation to revamping our surgical training programme, engaging with the Department of Health and the HSE in governing and delivering the surgical clinical programmes, and in providing professional support for our fellows and members is right on line with delivering on our mission statement. What do we do, you might ask, for a surgeon who experiences difficulties of a professional nature? The Medical Council inform us that the incidence of complaints against doctors has increased by 13% in the last year. Whether the complaint progresses to an inquiry or not, it still represents a very stressful experience for any doctor, and particularly a surgeon. I myself have had some experience of the complaints process at the Medical Council and found it much more upsetting and stressful than the equivalent medical legal process. Following discussions with Sean Tierney and Ms Eva Doherty, we are in the process of setting up a fellows support group to act as a resource for surgeons who find themselves the subject of complaint to the Medical Council or indeed in any other professional difficulty. And a number of surgeons, including myself, are prepared to act on a panel that might be of assistance to those going through a similar process. This, I believe, is a further means of the college supporting their fellows in times of difficulty. And for surgeons who have practiced problems in their hospital or region, we have for a number of years been providing assessors to evaluate their practice in its entirety. In some cases, we are in a position to organise periods of retraining. However, we are an extremely small surgical community in the scale of things, and it can be difficult sometimes to carry out these functions in a discreet manner. Therefore, on some occasions, we have to seek expert opinion from abroad. Overall, however, I believe that as a country, we should be, to the greatest extent possible, be able to handle all of these issues within our own surgical community and to avoid a cross-channel hired gun whose opinion can often be formed on the basis of a preset views of the Irish healthcare system. Our college was founded by charter in 1784. Many of our statutes, bylaws and ordinances are all still derived from that charter. In the meantime, and in particular in the past 40 to 50 years, the scope of activities of this college has expanded tremendously. We now have the biggest medical school in Ireland, based here, and recently have developed schools of pharmacy and physiotherapy. We have, as many of you know, significant overseas international activities in the field of medical education. And current and recent councils and presidents have recognised that the rapid expansion of these educational activities makes the College of 2013 very different to that of 200 years ago, or indeed even to 50 years ago. Nevertheless, as highlighted at the outset, the noble tenets of our founding fathers still hold true today. But in practical terms, the governance of the college needs to be reviewed. And our late past President Jerry O'Sullivan, in recognising this during his term, set up a governance committee. And since it came into existence in 2007, we have been constantly exploring a governance system that will incorporate our unique heritage and surgical origins, and indeed protect them, whilst at the same time having available at board level strategic guidance to our senior management, who run what has now become a very large medical and health sciences educational institution. During the last council term, a poll of council members was unanimous in its view that the purpose of seeking election as a member of council is to be involved in the governance of surgical practice, education and training in this country. Yet many of your council members will report to you that much of the business of council is on matters other than surgery. Part of the difficult work of the current governance committee under the chairmanship of Tom Gorey is to come up with a governance arrangement that will be modern, in line with best practice, whilst at the same time providing for the unique and now multifunctional nature of this college. As we draw closer to a solution, which I believe we will in the next number of years, we will of course keep the fellowship and membership fully informed of any significant changes and their implications. One recent positive development in the past year is that when I became president, we adopted 2 lay members onto the council in June 2012. And we're very fortunate to have the services of Justice Peter Kelly, a High Court judge, and Mr. Willie Cotter, a retired investment banker. Both of these men have shown a keen interest in the affairs of the college and have immersed themselves in our culture and strategy in the past number of months. I and my fellow councillors are deeply grateful to them for their interest and contributions at council meetings, and we are all in no doubt that having an external and alternative view is hugely important. At the Medical College of Penang, we will be graduating our 1,000th medical student this year. This, as you know, is a joint project with UCD and has been a great example of overseas cooperation between 2 Irish medical schools, and has produced very high quality medical personnel to that country over many years. We recently embarked on a further project in the University of Perdana in Kuala Lumpur. And this is a joint project with the Johns Hopkins University, who have been commissioned to provide a 4-year graduate entry program, whilst we in parallel provide a 5-year medical education program. I'm pleased to report that the recruitment of students into our program far exceeds that of the Hopkins program at the present time. But having said that, we're very anxious that both succeed because of the synergies that will exist in delivering, in particular, the clinical teaching program. We have not purchased any property in Kuala Lumpur. Support is required from Dublin, of course, as we develop our considerable health profile in KL, and so far the quality of student is high, and our resident staff, a mixture of Irish nationals and overseas faculty, have settled to the task very well. And our reputation for delivering high-quality educational medical programs is such that we are almost on a weekly basis being asked to look at potential medical school opportunities in many countries. We now have considerable expertise based here in Dublin at assessing these business projects, and opportunities and every aspect of the business model is explored before any agreements or memoranda are signed. There has been a tremendous learning in the institution over the past 20 years. The international activities are by and large related to our undergraduate medical school and the education of medical students, and I wanted to update you as our fellows and members about their current status, because as surgeons you no doubt receive commentary on some of these issues. Have these overseas activities any relevance to us as the surgical community based here in the college? Absolutely, I would argue. The RCSI brand is well known and respected in many parts of the world, and our international activities are in line with our noble purpose and core mission. We are a multifaceted international institution for undergraduate and postgraduate education and training in the healthcare professions, particularly surgery. The day-to-day management of all these facets falls to the senior management team under the leadership of the CEO Registrar. We've been very fortunate to have talented men of vision such as the late Harry O'Flanagan, Billy McGowan, who's here in the audience, Kevin O'Malley and Michael Horgan in that post since the 1960s. Our current CEO is Professor Cathal Kelly, a surgeon like ourselves, and suffice it to say that Cathal has to date surpassed every expectation in terms of his leadership and strategic thinking. And I can confidently assure the fellows and members that the trajectory of RCSI, with him as CEO, will always be upwards towards excellence. Our undergraduate activities provide a platform for us to establish postgraduate training programs and provide examinations and quality assurance for overseas surgical training programs. Professor Kevin O'Malley, our former registrar, used to speak of establishing a sphere of influence, and that is exactly, in my view, what our presence provides. It is an example of the unique synergies between what we do through the medical school here and in our overseas branches and what we do as surgeons, delivering high-quality surgical education and training and supervising surgical practice. In keeping with RCSI's humanitarian commitments and a sense of corporate social responsibility, we are involved in projects both locally with the community around the college and also internationally. Locally, we have the REACH program, Recreation, Education and Community Health program, which makes access to RCSI feasible for economically disadvantaged students and hopefully to stimulate further access and further interest in higher education. Internationally, since 2007, and again an initiative developed or set off by the late Jerry O'Sullivan, we have formed a partnership with the College of Surgeons of East Central and Southern Africa, COSEXA, to improve the standards of surgery throughout the vast region. 5 years later, RCSI provides assistance with surgical training through staff and curriculum development, provision of skills, technology and training, and I would like to pay particular tribute to Declan McGee, Vice President, who has energetically chaired the International Overseas Committee for the past number of years, and also to Professor Sean Tierney, who can spend up to 10 days at a time, several times a year, in the region, delivering on the above-mentioned initiatives. Michael Early has taken over as the Chairman of the Overseas Committee, and I wish him success. For my part, I have been very fortunate in my professional career to have been involved for 30 years with the College of Surgeons, initially as a tutor lecturer in David Boucher Hayes' Department of Surgery in the Richmond, which is now, I see, a bargain at 3.5 million, and later as a consultant and clinical teacher at the Richmond and Beaumont. Since becoming a member of council in 1991, I've been involved in the postgraduate side of the college, and now I have the enormous privilege and honour of serving as president. RCSI has a unique place in Irish medical and surgical history, and I believe it has a unique role to play in the delivery and regulation of modern healthcare, and in particular surgical care. We, as the fellows and members of this college, must be prepared and must support the leadership, in my view, in standing up for what we believe to be right, in our advocacy for our patients and our practitioners. I hope as your president for the next 18 months, and with the support of your council, we will be able to maintain the rightful place of this college in driving strategic healthcare reform and improving the quality of surgical services for our patients, whilst at the same time supporting and championing our surgical fellows for the quality of their work and the dedication. So I hope that this address has updated you appropriately on most of the issues that are exercising us at present in the college, and I look forward to answering your questions with the help of some of my colleagues down the front. Thank you very much.